What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you my first impressions of Tower of Time. There is a few reasons I'm checking this particular game out. For starters, it was requested fairly frequently by viewers, but the second reason is that the developer behind this particular game, known as Event Horizon, has another game in the works called Dark Envoy, which looks incredibly interesting, and I want to check out their previous work beforehand. Tower of Time is a pretty interesting title. It's kind of a CRPG meets TRPG, and in fact, there are some options that allow you to choose which side of that you really want to lean into more. But before we jump into that particular part, the game itself essentially sees you commanding a group of heroes while you explore a tower. This tower is said to hold the salvation for the dying world, as some catastrophe a long time ago has caused the world to start falling apart, essentially, and things are pretty bad. The exact specifics of that are kept pretty vague, but I imagine the story might just clue us in a little bit. But the character you play the game as, at least the person controlling all the characters, you don't actually bring your character into the fight, so to speak, but rather you send heroes into the tower to do it, or at least that's how it's framed. But your character in particular is connected to the tower through some events from your childhood that are kind of explained at the start of the game. And overall, I would say the story is fairly interesting. It's got some decent plot hooks, and I'm looking forward to seeing where they go. But I mentioned that you could kind of pick between CRPG and TRPG with this one, and that's true. The game has a variety of options for how you want to play the game, which is pretty great, and I don't mean just difficulty. At the beginning, you can pick either RPG or RPG Lite. RPG is basically the standard experience where you go through, you have to actually run through the story and everything. And then there's the RPG Lite option, which removes most of the story and just focuses on the combat and the tactical gameplay otherwise. Now, there is a permadeath option as well as various difficulty settings, as the combat in Tower of Time is pretty unique. Not necessarily in its parts, but rather it as a whole. So when you run into enemies on a various level of the tower, you will then be brought into a sort of arena where you'll fight these enemies that usually come at you in waves, with the exceptions being bosses. Bosses are just kind of there and you fight them and it's more of a set experience. But normal combat encounters, enemies from a set pool of enemies will come at you through various paths, if you will, and the game itself describes this as a sort of puzzle where they expect you to use the characters available to you and their abilities to affect the enemies and the paths even that they have available to come at you with. And it's meant to, again, be sort of a puzzle with a big emphasis on tactics, etc. Now, there are all sorts of difficulties, so this can be as hard or as easy as you want it to be, really. But it does get a bit more interesting because in terms of character progression and equipment, it's kind of a Diablo-like almost, in that you'll ultimately get 7 characters available to you, each with a different set of skills that they can pick and choose from, and you'll be able to increase their attributes, etc. as they level up. But this is combined with the equipment system, which is very Diablo-esque. There's a lot of loot. All of it has the potential to roll several magic properties, etc. So the loot is a bit randomized in the way you would see in something more typical of an ARPG, which is a very interesting system to see tied to this sort of tactical puzzle combat. Now, beyond that, when you are not in combat and just exploring, there's things like puzzles, etc. to solve. There's side quests on each level of the tower. And to serve as a bit of a home base for you, there is also a city available to your group, if you will, that you can exit and then do various things such as manage your inventory, enchant items, etc. But what I wanted to talk about here was the leveling. You don't actually level by engaging in combat in this game. Rather, you find blueprints as you explore the tower itself, and then you can use those blueprints to upgrade certain buildings in town, which will then increase the available level to each character, and then you take those characters to the barracks where you can train them, and that's how you actually level them up. So finding those blueprints and then spending the gold to actually train your characters is how you level and progress, which I think, if I had to hazard a guess, is probably to decouple progression from the actual combat, because some combat encounters can be outright avoided, and I think that they, again, wanted to stick to that sort of tactical, find a solution to this puzzle combat that dissuaded you from just grinding out levels, etc., which, again, is a pretty unique approach to things. But that said, my actual first impressions and opinion, if you will, is that so far I'm having fun. The story's pretty interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how this unfolds and how the mystery gets wrapped up, if you will. And beyond that, the game feels like a very good mix of exploration and combat, especially for an indie title. That's where we're going to leave it for now. I will, of course, be reviewing this title. Not exactly sure how long that's going to wind up taking, but I would imagine in a week or so, I'll have a proper review of this thing and you can get my full opinion there. So in the meantime, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz, but regardless of any of that, truly, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. We are growing every day, so thank you again. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.